Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio. You know what? We love our national parks. We love parks in general, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Not just parks, but what about military programs that are part of our national park system, our state park system, our regional parks, you name it. And we're very excited to have Ivan Levin back on the show. He is with the National Park Trust, and we love them. You can go to parktrust.org, and they do so many amazing programs. And one of them really is about military getting into parks and veterans getting into parks. So again, go to their website, parktrust.org. But welcome back, Ivan. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. Great to see you today.
You too. Now, listen, I'm in Gettysburg today with my background, but we've been to Gettysburg. And so a lot of times, maybe the first thing we're going to think about is parks that celebrate military history. And I think we do have quite a few parks, wouldn't you say, from national to regional? There's a lot of military history.
Absolutely. I mean, there are 424 national park sites managed by the National Park Service, and only 62 of those are the traditional national parks that people think of across the country. So that's kind of the amazing thing about public lands and the National Park Service in general is the stories that are told through these protected places. You know, there's a plethora of stories, including many stories that represent our military background in this country, and many stories that need to be told now and in the future.
So, and that's the thing too, about what about those who have just served and are still serving? What can we do about them getting into parks and kind of connecting with that legacy of what they've done in service for our country?
You know, there are so many things that are happening that are connecting the military community to public lands and waters. You know, two things specifically is that anyone that's part of the military community can get an annual military pass that's free, that breaks down that barrier of getting into national park sites, actually more than 2,000 federal lands for free. And now there's a lifetime pass. So if you go to the website on the National Park Service or through the National Park Trust and get information about the pass, you'll just look through the requirements and you can get a lifetime pass. So you get it one time, and for the rest of your life, you and your family can get into national parks for free. So that's one
huge
way. And then there's, of course, all sorts of programs that are happening, again, nationwide. Specifically, the National Park Trust works with many different facets of the military community to make sure people are not only engaging with national parks and public lands, but they're having meaningful, deep engagements, and they want to come back and do it again. So we're doing that with many amazing partners across the country and all kinds of parks, but we and other partners like us are doing great things to get people connected to the outdoors, especially the military community.
So when they go, you know, that's the one thing too, is what about accessibility? This is something, you know, we really got involved in when we first started our tour back in 2012, before full-time traveling like crazy gypsies across the country. But, you know, one thing we were with a travel writer friend in the Sequoias, and she goes, "Oh, I'm going to go do this option of doing the downtown shopping and thing." We're like, "Well, that's cool because we're not that, but you do that. That's good." She goes, "Well, I don't, you know, I'm not a backpacker to go into the park." And I'm like, whoa, Nellie, you know what I mean? You don't need to be a backpacker to go into a national park. And that's why we started our 1 Hour Walk Facebook group. Everyone hashtag 1 Hour Walk on Facebook, is to get people to understand it's not about, you don't have to be this Olympic athlete to go out into a national park or a state park or wildlife refuge. You know, there's so many types of parks and we cover them all now, but I want to talk about that because accessibility is something I think a lot of city parks are doing, municipal parks, community parks, urban parks, national parks, state parks are working on accessibility. And I think that really hits home for our veterans that have come home or maybe in a wheelchair, maybe on crutches, maybe, you know, just it could be any kind of disability, quite frankly, that they're facing.
Thank you, first of all, for raising that issue. And it's such an important conversation. I think there's a couple different answers. Number one, I think that we have to remember, for especially those of us in the space that are all about promoting parks and public lands and green spaces and waters as places that are not only accessible, but approachable. People have to feel like it's okay if I just want to have this kind of experience in this kind of park. And so parks are approachable. There's an experience for everyone. If you're looking to go on a half-mile walk around the visitor center, or if you're looking for that backcountry experience, that's kind of the amazing part about national parks is you can have both of those experiences no matter who you are. And as far as the accessibility question, one great way to find out, number one, what kinds of parks are accessible and what are those accessible features. The National Park Trust has an app called the Park Passport app, all one
We
word.
love that app.
It's free.
Yes.
It's downloadable on your iPhone, on your Android device. And not only will it tell you all kinds of parks that are close to home, you open up the app, it literally shows you hundreds of parks close to you. But when you click on all of those different national park sites and other public lands, if available, we have an accessibility link right there that tells you, that links you directly to the park website that gives you the information on how that park is accessible and how to prepare and plan for that experience. In addition, again, a lot of the activities that we're doing with national parks to engage the military community are making sure that we're doing activities that are accessible. For example, we have a great partnership with Project Healing Waters, who work specifically with disabled veterans and disabled active duty service members. And so through that relationship, we work with the partner to make sure that not only the fishing experience we're doing in the park is amazing and memorable, but that it's also accessible for everyone that comes on that trip. They have a rewarding experience no matter what their abilities might be.
So you guys partner with, different veterans groups to make these, memorable occasions. Let's put it that way, right? So that they can go in. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we partner with so many different elements of the military community. It's something that I know we are really proud of as an organization. It's not just—
I know, because listen, every time you come on the show and I mention the military experience, I'm like, what is going on with Ivan? And you get like a happy face about it.
Yeah, because it really—
yeah.
It really is an area of growth, and it's an area where it's not just one size fits all, one flavor for everybody. We're working with an organization called Our Military Kids, which is all about engaging the children and families of National Guard and Reserve service members. We're working directly with military installations. For example, we work very closely with Joint Base Meyer Henderson Hall in Alexandria, Virginia, to engage the families that are based out of that military installation. We're also working with military caregivers and their families through the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. We're working with military families across all branches through the National Military Family Association. And we're also engaging Gold Star families and military survivor families through an organization called TAPS, which is the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, which engages those that have lost a loved one domestically or abroad while in service. And so, so many different types of experiences, whether it's engaging those families in national forests, engaging those families in national parks, through introductory and approachable outdoor recreational activities meant for the family, but also through deeper introductory outdoor recreational activities like fishing experiences, whether that's saltwater fishing, surf fishing, fly fishing, all of those different types of experiences happening in national parks.
I think this is cool. I mean, I follow this one group on Facebook where they're helping veterans hike like massive trails, like the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail. I wish I remember the name off the top of my head here, but I see veterans go like, I just need this to go through. And the other thing we've noticed on our travels is that a lot of the park docents that are volunteering are military veterans. Have you noticed that too? Is that
Absolutely, actually, many, it's funny when we create these military, these opportunities and experiences for military families in the community. Oftentimes we are always working directly with the park rangers. And a lot of times we'll just mention, hey, if someone has, a background or experience with the military, we'd love for them to join us. And people come out of the woodwork that work for the National Park Service and other public land managing agencies that have that military connection. And oftentimes, if it's not through their direct service, it's through a child, a sibling, or a parent that had service, and it was obviously something very meaningful for them, and they still have that connection to the community today. So I see that all the time at every park we're at.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing though. Like, I think that it's something like once you start serving your country, you can't shake it. You know what I mean? And I think it's something once a family, and you mentioned family, and I think that's a really huge thing because it's true. Like the kids are moving around, the military brats. Like it was, I hate to say the word brat, but that's what they want to call themselves. I don't know about it, but like, I traveled as a kid. I mean, I went to 16 schools. I know what it's like to go in and, but military, you do kind of have like a ingrown family, but it was never like that back in the day. You think about Vietnam days, Hal Moore, a famous general, his wife is the one who started the program for women to, have a support group for when, the taxi came up with the letter saying, your husband died in Vietnam, Um, so there wasn't that kind of branch of service. Now we're seeing more and more of it and necessary. And I think the kids, I know I traveled and it was great, but it was also difficult. It taught me lessons of going in and knowing, oh, you're going to be popular the first day because people are curious who the heck you are. And the next day you're a chopped meat. It's like, that's it. You're chopped liver. Nobody cares. And you're going to have to step up, in what you do. So there's a resiliency with that. But I also think those kids need a break of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of folks are familiar with the term service member, readiness. But family readiness is actually a big theme that I know the Department of Defense has been thinking a lot about, and making sure that the family is also healthy. And when I say healthy and focusing on health and wellness, that's from physical, mental, emotional, psychological, financial, all the different kind of ways that a family needs to be healthy to support their family member. It's all about the individual as well as the family, because if the family isn't healthy and doesn't have overall health and wellness, or good health and wellness, and that directly affects the service member. And so that's where we have really seen the magic of our work, is that connection between health and wellness, not only for the service member, but for the family, to show that public lands and national parks are a place that you can engage multi-generationally. It's a place that you almost have a built-in outdoor community no matter where you go, and how it does directly contribute to not only your physical health, but the mental health attributes, and the ways that it really helps you improve your mental health in so many ways. That is really one of the most important factors.
I think that's huge. I mean, the mental, we lived in 29 Palms outside Joshua Tree National Park. We could see Joshua Tree from our front door. We were very lucky. However, we also lived right at the military base where, and in one weekend, we literally heard 6 suicides. Heard it. Didn't quite know what happened, found out the next day, and it was very depressing. And it's not just about, like you say, the service member going off to fight, going off to war. And of course, we have not finished with wars in the world. And sadly, we would like that, but it's not what's happening. And the family unit, like when you said the kids and all of these aspects, I think it's high time. Honestly, it's high time. And I think the national parks being accessible, having programs for kids, and also turning specifically to these families and saying, hey, we're here. Even if we have to create a new program for you, we're going to do it. We want to take care of you, because when you go to these battlefields too, I kind of feel like, I don't know if they want to go, but maybe they do. Maybe it helps that connection. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like sometimes maybe the family just wants to go to Yosemite and really understand like that amazing natural beauty, right? And indigenous cultural history, there's all of that too. But then there's all these battlefields that kind of realize that you're part of that legacy of these battlefields.
Yeah, a couple of different things. Number one, I want to go back to something that you were saying about just the power of parks, and not only contributing to overall health and mental health, but also with PTSD. I mean, I don't need to repeat the countless research that's out there that
Right.
shows
Like I'm
how the
saying, yeah.
right, how the outdoors can definitely help directly with PTSD, but also those that are going through the grieving process, like the example with the organization TAPS that I mentioned. The reason relationship and partnership is so powerful is because the way that the outdoors helps those that have lost a loved one through the grieving process. So it really, no matter what end of that spectrum you're on, the outdoors plays a really pivotal role in kind of that healing process. And
Can
as
I
far
just touch on this? That just go like for a second, like what I said about the suicides that weekend that we heard, which is still traumatic, and you realize you're right by Joshua Tree at that time. This is quite a few years back. This is during the Gulf War kind of time frame. And 29 Palms was became famous as the soldiers who pulled down Saddam Hussein's, monument and all of that. But here we were at Joshua Tree, and had we had those services then, I wonder if that could have, I mean, that when you talk about that, and I just want people to understand, like, these services are so important. Here, you can have the nature right outside your doorstep, but you need that conduit to kind of pull you out of the house, and you know what I mean?
you need
So I
someone to
just want to
say,
say
come
that.
with
Yeah.
me, you're welcome, come with me.
Yeah, come.
And I think public lands, it's such the idea of public lands, as people know, it's America's best idea. And the fact that we can say thank you for your service, or thank you for your service member's service, thank you for what you have given. And one of the best ways we can do that is inviting and welcoming someone into the outdoors, into a park. And I want to get back to something else that you said about, again, the park experience can happen at battlefields, monuments, lake shores, but focusing on the military experience that's happened here domestically. I mean, we're lucky that there are no battlefields that have happened from any of our lifetimes on, really American soil, other than Pearl Harbor is probably the most, the most recent on American soil type, which is a national park site. And so those stories need to be told. But I do think that in opportunities where you can combine outdoor recreation with those kind of cultural stories and lessons that can be told and learned, that's a great way to really cement that experience. So when I think about Gettysburg, which you have in your background, I've actually personally worked with groups that have held overnight camping experiences on the Gettysburg battlefield.
Oh my gosh.
And that experience of being outdoors and everything that goes along with that outdoor experience, but also taking a moment to breathe and realize where you are and the significance that it has and the stories that are there. It's very powerful. And so, you can imagine how you can mimic that at different sites across the country.
Well, Gettysburg is, I always talk about this on shows that, we'd covered it for years with the National Parks Arts Foundation with artists in residence. They stayed in the Klingel House, which is also haunted, by the way, really crazy stories out of there. And we've had the
That'll be for the
show.
Halloween show.
Yeah, really, for sure. And we finally got there, and it was just by chance during the pandemic. And it was like everybody was like first allowed out, but it was still the pandemic, And Nancy and I got there. We were staying in Tawnytown, Maryland, not far from you, I think. I don't know, but it's all kind of there to me.
It's East Coast.
Anything that's like 1,000 miles away is close. But anyway, we went there, and I know we'd done so many interviews and stories and research, and we got there, and we actually were at the Klingel House at the beginning. We did the president's oh gosh, come on, Eisenhower's house. Who is it that has their farm there? It is Eisenhower.
I'm not sure.
I'm going to mess up. It is Eisenhower. It's his farm right there on the way in. And I was like, just leave me at the farm. This is like the coolest farm, and like I went in, but it was closed. So a lot of indoor stuff was closed during the pandemic. But then we got into Gettysburg, and it was overcast, just like this photo behind, and people were everywhere. There were people on horseback, and I'm like, so there was that side of me going, film the horseback, which I did, because it's kind of like you could replace the people with soldiers, like weird creative side. And then we started getting into it, and the heavy feeling. And I always say the word for Gettysburg is overwhelm.
Mhm.
It was so deep. And then when we got to the graveyard and then the unknown soldiers graveyard, like here's unknown, like,
Mhm.
oh
Mhm.
my God. Nancy and I actually turned around and just went to the picnic area and hung
Mhm.
out with the most giant woodpeckers I've seen in this country and just sat there and like, we could barely eat our sandwich. It was just, we needed to go to the nature part now.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
was so deep. So when you're talking about camping there, and I know park artists who've recreated battle scenes and put them, military guys who've done it, and
Mhm.
it's I feel like I know those who have served have gone there, and one Nick Collier is a photographer, and he served in the military, and they had a veterans program at that time, and he put himself in his clothes, his military gear, into the scenes of historic photos of Gettysburg soldiers who had been fighting, and he
Mhm.
managed to transfix this. I'll have to send you the photo of this. And it just kind of, he was like putting himself from present to past in there because that's what happens in the military. And when we were there, I was like, I went and stood where he was doing that. And then it was like double whammy, like I can barely handle this. It
Mhm.
is so deep when you go to these places. So when we talk about the military, I think it's also important for us who may not, for civilians, as you want to say, understand what the military goes through to go to these battlefields when we talk about military. It's very
I
important. And if you can go with someone that you know has served or his family who has served, if you're not I don't know anybody who's not connected to a military person, but like you need to go to understand.
Mhm. Mhm. I agree. And, at the National Park Trust, not only on our youth and family engagement side, but also on our park protection side and park preservation side, we also have done countless projects at national battlefields, River Raisin National Battlefield in Michigan, for example, where we've
Oh,
done lots of different land projects where we work to make sure that that park is protected, and every inch of that park within the boundaries is also protected forever. And so as a big part of our work, we protect land that's within and adjacent to national park sites and make sure that, again, that land and adjacent lands can be protected forever. And so a lot of our projects have revolved around national battlefields. So again, I encourage folks to go to parktrust.org and learn more about our land projects, but specifically look at some of the battlefields that we've protected.
well, you've done what, 40 years this year, right? So it's your big anniversary this year, which is awesome. But when you say, yeah, I think that's what's so interesting. Like we are talking about the National Parks Arts Foundation, but even us, we're nationalparktraveling.com. But reality is, so it's about people going to these iconic 62 plus, I'm going to say plus, because you never know. Tomorrow we could have another national park. So don't get on me for the numbers, people. But it could always grow, which we're happy about. But it is about those adjacent sites, right? And I know you care about all, like when you go on your park passport app, there's more than national park units on there.
Oh, I mean, we can't restrict an outdoor experience to
Yeah.
just enabling with national parks. There are state parks, local parks. I spend more time in my neighborhood park along the stream, on the trail, than any other outdoor place, throughout the year. But there's national marine sanctuaries. There's U.S. Army Corps of Engineers sites. There's sites that are focused on cultural storytelling, sites that are focused on water recreation, sites that are focused on wildlife and sea life in national marine sanctuaries. Whatever type of experience you're looking for, there is some sort of protected public land nearby. And again, the Park Passport app is an amazing tool. Just open it up, take all the filters off, and you will see the thousands of
Yeah.
parks that are on the app, but just in your neck of the woods.
Well, the other thing too is like there's trails, national historic trails, and I encourage people to follow them. It's a really good, like good way for your kids too to understand how people traveled in like the Mormon Battalion. Like I'm used to covering that in the Southwest, and we were in Iowa recently. And all of a sudden, I'm like following the Jefferson Highway Trail, and then I'm like, oh, the Mormon Battalion Trail was almost like the same trail because these trails follow each other. The Mormon Battalion was a military, unit that went through as well, not just the, hey, we're heading west, as a group of people, but The El Camino Real de los Tejas National Historic Trail, that became a Santa Fe Trail was military too at times. So I think it's
the Over
something too
Mountain
to think
Victory
about.
Trail that runs through Tennessee and North Carolina. Yeah, I agree. There's and the stops and
Oh,
the
I didn't know
stories
that one.
that you can learn around, along the way. You could go on and on.
Oh, that one. I think we've done it because we just didn't know what it was. There was like a sign, and no, we've done parts of that trail. And I just now, when you said that, I'm like, we've done part of it, and we didn't doc. Okay, well, I better get back on my
There's a new
passport.
one, Over Mountain Victory Trail. Check it out.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So for everyone, best thing is the park passport, really, right? And for military programs, where do you want people to go and know about?
Yeah, first of all, you can download the app. It's Park Passport, all one word, on your Apple App Store or Android Google Store, Android devices, and go to parktrust.org to learn all about the work of the National Park Trust over the last 40 years and what we're looking at for the next 40.
What is a military site that you haven't been to that you want to go to?
Ooh, a military site that I want to go to that I haven't been to. Ooh, that's a really good question. Well, I haven't done any of the sites that are in the plains, like in the middle of the country. And so that's definitely,
Dude, there's a ton.
which is a different type of military history than we've talked about. But I think it'd be really interesting to explore some of those battlefields and some of those,
a lot of forts
that I have not learned much about.
There's a lot of forts. And the forts are interesting because they were like cities that were built up. So there's a lot of human history.
Yeah.
And I always think about these battlefields also about family history for folks to go to find out about their ancestors who served in military. These forts hold these places, to go to.
Oh, and they're all over. And I think growing up on the East Coast, I'm a little spoiled in that regard, because growing up, Colonial Williamsburg was close by. The Civil War battlefields of Richmond or Manassas are close by. And so, I had everything from Jamestown to the Revolutionary War to the Civil War, all really within my home state and within, not far from home. But it's a lot of those kind of Western expansion stories and some of that history that I haven't been exposed to much. So those are definitely the sites that I look forward to learning more about.
Oh, I encourage you to do the Southwest on military history, because there's Fort Bowie that is southeast of Tucson. And Fort Bowie is by Chiricahua National Monument. And everyone, that actually has one of the first, what do you call it, guest ranches of the West there. It's and talk about family history. It's interesting. But Fort Bowie had the California Column go through there, which eventually basically stopped the Civil War. This was like the Southwest played this huge role in the Civil War, and people just go, "Oh, the Southwest, they didn't have anything to do with it." Oh no, it did. It did. Fort Union up in northern New Mexico on the Santa Fe Trail. I mean, just yeah. If you go, I would say the Southwest into the Midwest, and a bunch of forts that were settled up.
They're on the list. They're on the list.
I'm going to send you a big list, but I know you have it on your park passport, so you don't need me to do that. But I want to. I just want everyone to go to them. But also, like the going back east, what you're talking about was something completely new for us. We've always been on the West and the East Coast, and then suddenly we're going to graveyards with Revolutionary soldiers buried there. And we're like, oh, wait, we just crossed the boundary. This is a little bit different.
It is, and it's such a unique kind of American history that, if you didn't grow up in the 13 colonies, especially, on the East Coast, you really weren't exposed to it much. And growing up, Virginia history was U.S. history, really for us, because it was so connected. So yeah, it's definitely something unique to this area.
Wow. I mean, it's cool. We've experienced some of it, like just some of it, like Monacacy. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly yet. Monacacy. It's a battlefield in Maryland.
Monacacy.
See, yeah, I can't pronounce anything in your area. I can't pronounce anything anywhere, but that still freaks me out. That is one of it actually freaked me out a little bit more than Gettysburg, because the families that were inside their farmhouses when the Civil War was going on, and they're sitting there with their kids going, oh yeah, everyone's shooting each other and cannons going off, and let's just go down to the basement. And the next morning, everyone's dead outside their farmhouse. Like, that's some messed up stuff. I mean, how do you how do you bring up your kids that way?
Catoctin National Battlefield in Maryland is another one. I believe it's the bloodiest battle of the Civil War that happened there. And so that's another really powerful site. That
Wow.
similar. It's deep. You know, it's a deep experience.
It's not, it is. I mean, it's so real. And yeah, I'm here complaining about the internet, like get a grip. It's like when you go to these places, and I think that's the thing about these parks is it's a very humbling experience that makes you understand the bigger connection to the world. And
Right.
whether you're on a battlefield or Yosemite and the grandeur of that, it's like still makes you kind of like get a grip.
Well, our military history goes back to even those parks. You know, the first park rangers of Yosemite National Park were the Buffalo Soldiers. They were responsible
Exactly.
for guarding
Thank
and
you.
protecting the park, but they were not allowed to go into the park for recreational use. So that story to me, I mean, one, it shows the connection between the military and the National Park Service all the way back to the beginning, and how that story needs to be told. In fact, we work very closely with Park Ranger Shelton Johnson. He
In
tells an
Yosemite.
amazing Buffalo story soldier and tells the story of their role at Yosemite National Park. So I encourage everyone to definitely learn more about Shelton and that story of the Buffalo Soldiers.
Well, this is huge because we're also like, look at the River National Park unit, a national park, but national monument.
Yeah.
We had Betty, like the park ranger Betty, she was like iconic, right?
Oh, yeah.
She is amazing. But then, you're talking about that region of California. Up in Sequoia National Park, we had Charles Young, the Buffalo Soldier. And
Absolutely.
Charles Young, by the way, when you drive up the mountain into the park, guess who was the very first superintendent of a national park was
Yep.
Charles Young, Black man who also served in the military, right? And
Yep.
became the Buffalo Soldier and was acting superintendent until they found a white person, right? I'm just being honest. And he's the one who made the road happen. I mean,
Right.
Like, that's it. We're going to do this and we're going to do it in this amount of time. And he did it. And all throughout the West, you'll find the Buffalo Soldiers. And then Tuskegee. Let's talk about the Tuskegee Institute is also part of the National Park Service. And that talks about the airmen, the Black airmen that, also fought in World War. Oh gosh, it's two,
So
right?
I know. It's just hearing you.
I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get in trouble because I'm going to get my history wrong.
There's so many stories that our public lands and protected places can tell us. And so that's why I encourage everyone, whether it's downloading the Park Passport app, go to Google, but find and discover a new place near you and look for some of these stories, these lesser told stories, some of these parks less traveled. Check them out because you will really walk away impacted more than you ever could have imagined.
And by the way, our National Park Service is in places like Guam and the Virgin
American
Islands.
Samoa.
Yeah, military sites. And so that's the other thing is the military sites. And you're going to find military history just about in every park. I can guarantee it. And even rest areas across America used to be tank places where they would position tanks during World War II. So it's never ending. And one day we will, maybe by Memorial Day, we'll get our memorial park map up on our site because we've done more memorial parks than you can imagine. It's crazy. But thank you, Ivan. Always a pleasure to have you on the show and to showcase the amazing work that the National Park Trust has done and continues to do. So everyone go to parktrust.org and again, go download their Park Passport app. It is fun. Nancy and I travel country nonstop and the Park Passport rocks. It helps. So check it out. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com and also nationalparktraveling.com. Thanks so much, Ivan.
Thanks so much for having me. Bye, everybody.